We're going to do things a little bit different today. Usually I would get to introduce the successor to this great award, and it's been an incredible year. However, I'm not going to be the one who's introducing the 2012 Advisor of the Year. I want to ask the 2009 winner, Paul Kendall from Palo Alto, to come up and do the honor for me. So, yeah, thanks, Paul.
This year's honoree National Dow Jones News Fund Journalism Teacher of the Year comes from my same high school in Silicon Valley. So I wanted to start with this kind of Silicon Valley lesson, which is that you think you're Yahoo one year, and then along comes a Google. and then you're just a Yahoo again. 6 years ago, Ellen Austin was a name I only knew from the JEA listserv. When an opening appeared at my school, she came out for an interview, and I discovered a fearless, engaging, whip-smart advisor and First Amendment champion, someone I was delighted to have join the existing advisor team at Palo. In the years since, Ellen has shown herself to be a masterful teacher, advisor of dazzling print, broadcast, and online programs, and a wise and dear colleague. If scholastic journalism can be thought of as an industry, and an industry on the cusp of radical technological change, Ellen Austin is one of our greatest industry leaders, a visionary. It was only 3 years ago that I stood here, at least partly on the basis of my strength, supposed strength in online journalism work. I thought I was doing all right. But looking at what Ellen does with her staffs regularly makes me look like a technological dinosaur. We often say that our 7 or 8 publications at Palo constitute a kind of a microcosm of the larger media market. We really have competition between staffs on the same campus. In an era of convergence, there's overlap, leading to intense competition for stories and readers within the school, struggles to be the first to adapt to innovation. We literally face the threat of one publication's innovation putting another publication out of business. Ellen's sports magazine staff, once confined to print, and her broadcast journalism program that she co-advises, is consistently excelling in this new environment, often covering and posting stories quicker, better, and with a stronger array of social media and multimedia. You know, the landscape of high school journalism has changed when you find staffs of the same school competing to see who can tweet a score or a news event the soonest. Regularly, that quick tweet is coming from one of Ellen's students. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you the next Dow Jones News Fund Journalism Teacher of the Year. Congratulations, Ellen. You totally deserve it.
Good afternoon. Thank you to Dow Jones News Fund, especially Rich Holden, and to Linda Shockley, and to Columbia Scholastic Press Association and the Poynter Institute. Thank you, JEA and National Scholastic Press Association, for a great convention here in San Antonio. Thanks to all who have sent kind greetings, to my colleagues at Palo Alto High School and former colleagues at St. Paul Academy and Cannon Falls High School, to the Viking Magazine and In Focus broadcast staffs, as well as past staffs of the Lantern and Rubicon. You create the images and you tell the stories. You're why I'm here and why I do this work. It is a great and humbling honor to be addressing you today. I'd like to talk this afternoon about leaps of faith. I teach English and journalism at Palo Alto High School. We have a journalism fleet at Pali, as Paul mentioned, where I work with some astonishing colleagues. Paul Kandel, a good friend, outstanding teacher, and my anchor. And colleagues, Mike McNulty, Esther Wojcicki, and Margot Wixom. About 20 to 25% of Pali's 2,300 students pass through the doors of our journalism programs. We're building a bond-funded media arts building with doors slated to open next fall. That building represents tangible support from our parent community, who are willing to take another bite in taxes because they understand that our schools are our futures. Let me paint a picture of what it looked like yesterday in Vikings classroom as editors staffed up weekend coverage for the football playoff game. Video and DSLR cameras being checked out, sideline reporters' passes getting picked up and distributed, editors organizing the timeline expectation for the game recap and photos. By midnight, 1 a.m. Friday night. A crisp discussion of how tweets, real-time game photos and videos, and Facebook posts would flow and converge together throughout the evening to create a hybridized stream of coverage from kickoff through final buzzer. If I could read minds, I'm pretty sure a Tumblr meme floating in the air right now might read, "Sweet, living in California's wonderland of student-free expression with a new building and rooms full of students singing Kumbaya and then writing and posting all weekend long." So I'd like to tell you, as radio commentator Paul Harvey used to say, the rest of the story. I live my life by several mantras that drive me. Leap and the net will appear is the primary one. That's my mom laughing, I think. I grew up in Illinois, the land of Lincoln, moved to Europe in my 20s, spent 2 decades in Minnesota, and moved 6 years ago to the nation's hub of innovation and entrepreneurship, Silicon Valley. But as writer and academic J.R.R. Tolkien put it well, not all those who wander are lost. Neither of my parents were writers or journalists. My dad, a mechanical engineer and weekend pilot, passed away 8 years ago. I'm thankful for his gifts. He taught me how to take a photo and to fly an airplane, and always to take leaps of faith. My mother is here today and has been a teacher since 1957 and still teaches today. That you are still a teacher at 77 in a career that has gone for more than half a century is a wonder. She's the inspiration, support, and template of much that I do in my classroom and my life. And Mom, I hope you'll help me enter a stack of quiz grades back at the hotel after we finish up here. My path to journalism advising started with a camera. I grew up in Rockford, Illinois. In 1976, when I was a 7th grader, the Rockford government, facing a budget crisis, proposed a property tax referendum, much like Pally's. It failed. Our K-12 schools were stripped of all sports, music, orchestras, choirs, bands, all journalism, all art. Over 400 teachers lost their jobs, including my mom, whose position as a music teacher was eliminated. There were two impacts on my life of that failed referendum. First, I vowed never, ever, ever to become a teacher. Secondly, I picked up a camera and fell in love. My dad, an amateur photographer, built a darkroom in our basement to give me something to do. I took to the chemistry, sequence, and magic of photography with joy. I found my voice with film. Although my AP Lit seniors wouldn't believe it if they heard me right now, although I am showing pictures of England and Bath, my heroes are not Jane Austen, unless it's that one right there. Yeah, it's the family punchline. Or Shakespeare, whose birthday I share. My heroes were legendary mid-century photojournalists: Gordon Parks, Margaret Bourke-White, Robert Capa, Dorothea Lange. Their lenses were courageous, creating a dialogue about social issues with images that leveraged change that needed to come. I was 6 months old when JFK was assassinated, 4 years old when Dr. Martin Luther King was killed in Memphis, in first grade when Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon. What would our collective memory be without the iconic photographs of those moments? After finishing up at the University of Illinois, including stints as a photographer on the Daily Illini campus paper and the ILIO yearbook, I spent time living in Europe, teaching English as a foreign language, then moving to Minnesota, where I set up a small photo studio in a warehouse in St. Paul. Somewhere along the way, bowing to family pressure, I also got my teaching certification, just in case. My camera has traveled into Kentucky coal country to document the proud but poverty-laden lives there. I've run from mobs in South Africa when I visited that nation in the last days of apartheid and turned my lens on the villages and the homelands which were looking towards a coming freedom. What has traveled from photography into my life as a teacher is an emphasis on capturing strong visuals in our stories. I coach my students to think with their eyes as much as their ears, using the mantra from early photojournalist Cartier-Bresson, the decisive moment. The Viking decided early to be a photography-forward magazine. These are my kids' images now, because images are central to the story of sports. Photos also reach members of our community for whom printed words are hard to process. Visual journalism is a tool of inclusion. The verse my Kentucky grandmother taught me from the New Testament provides the second mantra by which I live. Knock and the door shall be opened. I'd add, if it doesn't open, you may need to kick it gently, because change often means pushing against the status quo. Back to that young girl, the photographer. I thought it would be nifty to take pictures for the school paper when we finally got electives back 2 years later. One day in the fall of my freshman year, I went to the pub room to meet longtime newspaper advisor Joan Schmelsley and asked to join the newspaper staff. She looked me up and down and said, "I don't take girls as photographers." I'd heard about glass plate negatives. I didn't realize I just met a glass ceiling for a freshman girl. I walked up to the school counselor's office to ask if that sounded right to him. I have no idea what went on behind the scenes, but suddenly I was on staff as a photographer and a girl. That experience of someone trying to shut a door stays with me as a teacher. Who are we missing on our staffs right now? Who are we missing out there in the world of our audience? How do we kick open those doors and invite those kids in? Alain Lamarque, current Viking co-editor, entered Palo journalism through an alternate summer journalism internship program based in East Palo Alto and started by Paul Candell 5 years ago. East Palo Alto, EPA, borders Palo Alto. EPA has historically been Black, Hispanic, and economically struggling. Alon, who's Mexican-American, completed the summer EPA program, joining Viking as a sophomore, the youngest staff member ever. He's won awards for his writing, was named managing editor his junior year, and this year, as a senior, is one of the 3 co-editors-in-chief. Alon says, I wasn't even on this path to being where I am now, but I can't imagine what it would be like if I hadn't been here. I'm the first Latino editor on Viking. To be standing up in front of people, telling them what we've done. Much of the time the students are Asian or white and they don't usually look like me. It makes me proud to be Latino. Film also matters more to inclusion and connections. Marissa Skleroff, co-executive producer of In Focus, Pally's broadcast program, says, the capabilities of film are extraordinary. Film is accessible to everybody. The internet is accessible to every high school student. If you have access to that, it doesn't matter what cultural background you come from, what languages you speak, or how far apart you are. But back to the story. Becoming a teacher took a leap of faith and a well-timed phone call. In 1999, a photo client and school board member in the small town of Cannon Falls, about an hour away from Minneapolis, pitched me a job. They needed an AP Comp teacher for a year, and I needed health insurance. I took the job. The story of the subsequent creation and success of the Cannon Falls Lantern is a Friday Night Lights tale of kids without resources creating a legacy. But it's equally a tale of professional journalism advocates making the net appear in midair for those newspaper kids when they leapt. Those advocates who were integral to a beginning program staying alive, Ann Akers, then at NSPA, provided constant support and advice. Sandy Woodcock from NAA Foundation awarded 2 grants. And Linda McDonnell of Minneapolis' Journalism 360 wrapped my poor rural kids into her program centered around urban kids of color. In its lack of access to resources, poverty is its own color. Separately, AS&E's fellowship in 2003 at Ball State was transformative, giving me the training and tools a new advisor needs to do and keep a job. As Emily Banks, former co-editor-in-chief of The Lantern, put it, Ellen learned with the rest of us. Emily ended up majoring in print journalism at the University of Minnesota. As of last month, she's the managing editor at the rapidly expanding social media company, Mashable.com in New York. I thought the teaching thing would be doable for a year or 2. But somewhere along the way, the courage of kids, the energy of young minds at work, and the intellectual challenge of the classroom turned me into a career teacher. After 5 years, I took a job at a small private school in St. Paul, closer to my Minneapolis home. Generous private school teachers on the listserv, like Tracy Ann Senna from San Francisco, became long-distance mentors. Tracy reminded me that private schools exist without the same First Amendment protected rights and also live under the realities of an at-will employment contract. And then, in late 2007, I took the leap which has led here. At this point, I need to thank the 2 godfathers of scholastic journalism from Northern California who are dear to me and to so many advisors here, Steve O'Donohue and Nick Ferentinos. Thank you. Steve-O sent me an email in March of that year, sternly writing that I should give up frigid Minnesota and head west to ever-sunny Palo Alto. I'd heard about Paul's cutting-edge work with the Pally Voice site, even though I knew him only from reading Voice online. I'm probably not the first teacher to put a for sale sign on a house, pack up a car, and drive cross-country for a guy she's only met online. What I took with me from Minnesota to California was the continuing friendship of a tight group of advisors in Minnesota whose generosity and kindness embody the aw shucks ethos of that culture. Lori Hansen, Liz Keeling, Lori Keekley, Catherine Campbell, I'm looking at you. I also packed along a fervent belief in student-free expression, having seen firsthand the challenges posed by prior review and challenges in Minnesota, a Hazelwood state. When I arrived, I was welcomed and included by JEA Northern California's Board of Colleagues and Rockstar Advisors, Sarah Nichols, Michelle Balmeo, Tracy, Don Bott, Carl Grubaugh, Randy Ham, and the other great people on that board. And I also got my new assignment at Palo. The school decided to add a regularly published all-sports print magazine. Palo produces world-class athletes on a regular basis, like 49ers football coach Jim Harbaugh, Stanford soccer star Teresa Noyola, and NBA point guard phenomena Jeremy Lin. Me? I'm a pre-Title IX girl. I've never played a sport formally. But the young men and women on Viking, and later in Focus, let me in, welcomed me, and taught me about sportsmanship, stats, spirit. They taught me about dedication and why team equals family. A door that could have been slammed on me, they instead opened. Phil Taylor, Sports Illustrated columnist, told my class a couple of years ago, start with sports and use it as a jumping off point into social issues. And we have. From the beginning, the Viking has used its platform of sports to include pieces on race, HIV/AIDS, concussions, Title IX and gender discrimination, cancer, the murder of a Palo Olympian, dangerous diet practices of athletes, drug use and recovery, the money of high school sports. This is the second issue cover of the Viking, October 2007, which featured a big story on hazing in sports at Palo. I wondered how likely, or not likely, it would be for me to keep my post as a probational teacher. This story would kick out a lot of doors. We got the 5 W's and an H. Our administrators supported our right to publish. Thank you, California Ed Code 48907. And we vetted our story with SPLC and with Logan Imony, the executive director of NSPA. The hazing story became news in the professional media in our community and the Bay Area, and led to a school policy that tightened anti-hazing regulations. I'm proud of the editors who produced that piece, Noah Snyder and Peter Johnson, to varsity athletes who received the Courage in Journalism Award from JEA in spring 2008 for taking a stand. Knock on the door or kick it open, but let people and important issues that matter into your publications. I repeat this next phrase to myself and to my students. I borrowed it from Facebook, a saying on the walls at their corporate office. Go fast and break things. Trying new things is a core part of Vikings culture, even if new things don't always work smoothly or well. Viking began augmenting its print offering in 2010 with social media, adding Twitter as a way to provide instant sports scores. Soon we added a Facebook account, Tumblr, Instagram. The next spring, I'm dreading spring this year. The next spring, Viking leadership decided that it was time to take a bigger leap and build a 24/7 all-sports website. We went live 2 weeks later, in March 2011. Money is not the barrier to going after a 24/7 presence in publications. It's handling the change, the uncertainty, the chance that it might break and need fixing. Fellow Viking co-editor Kevin Dukovic says the key to leading a publication invested in this approach means feeling a little uncomfortable on a nearly daily basis. While my Palo students may sound more amped up in approach, What they do is now attainable almost anywhere in this country, where kids are willing to take a shot at it, whether a tech hub like Palo Alto or a tiny town like Cannon Falls. Talking about the what could be as advisors, though, is immaterial if we don't talk right now about climate change. I'm not talking about glaciers. I'm talking about the great chill on student-free expression that we've lived with for the past 25 years, Hazelwood v. Kuhlmeier. If we could collectively go fast and break something together, I'd like to see us break Hazelwood soon. Let's help Frank Lamonti and the SPLC. Hazelwood is a cancer, and we need to get rid of it and find the cure. I guess I belong to the Church of Journalism. Perhaps the Founding Fathers also recognized the close relationship of the core values of the country they were building, including religious beliefs and the rights of a free press and free expression, next to each other in the same 45 words. My sister Beth, who had a long career as a journalist and writer before taking the leap into the political world as a speechwriter, sent me this in an email the day she heard that I had received this award and would be making a speech here today. This comes from the Book of Common Prayer for those who influence public opinion. Almighty God, you proclaim your truth in every age by many voices. Direct in our time, we pray, those who speak where many listen and write what many read, that they may do their part in making the heart of this people wise, its mind sound, and its will righteous. I don't have a charter or a punch list for you today. Just go home and do one thing that makes you a little uncomfortable. It can be a small leap. You don't have to sell your house, hitch up the covered wagon with your trusty dog, and drive over the Great Salt Flats on your way to the promised land of journalism. As Alon says, you have to take innovation small steps at a time. Take the steps that you can with what you have. And if you've already taken that leap of faith, mentor someone who hasn't. What's in it for us? I'll leave you with this visual metaphor from one of my favorite writers, Annie Dillard, from An American Childhood, talking about learning to play football. It was all or nothing. You have to fling yourself at what you're doing. You have to point yourself, forget yourself, aim, dive. Don't be afraid to leap. Thank you, and have a great year.